You got a question there?
I do have a question. This question comes to us from Derek. Derek says, can you explain iCloud photo library?
No, no one can.
Is it free? If I enable it, do all my photos back up to the cloud on all my Apple devices? Do my photos stay in the cloud forever? I'm apprehensive about enabling. I want to use it as a backup to my Google Photos backup.
He's got questions.
I have answers. I wrote a whole book about photos. I have answers.
It needed a book, frankly.
It did.
Okay.
It did. So the answer is, yeah, it's free, but only 5 gigs of it. And that's 5 gigs no matter how many.
It's using your iCloud storage.
It uses your iCloud storage. So no matter how many devices you've got linked to your Apple ID, you still only get 5 gigs for free. Now you can get, I think, 50 gigs for 99 cents a month, which is not a bad deal.
I did the $2 for 200, I think, is what it is. Right?
Yeah, there's a few different plans, all the way up to a terabyte, and I think now 2 terabytes.
It is not the cheapest cloud storage out there.
It's not terrible. It's sort of in the ballpark in a way that it didn't used to be. It's sort of in the Dropbox and Microsoft ballpark, but it's not as cheap as sort of Google or Amazon offering.
Well, he's comparing it to Google Photos, which is free for reduced size images.
for slightly reduced.
Yeah.
I
don't, by the way, I find it's pretty good. I just use
Google Photos is great. The problem is if you're using an iPhone, Google Photos, I believe you have to, every now and then you need to launch it so that it can upload your photos. Because it doesn't run in the background. And Apple, as the platform vendor, gets to run and sync all your photos in the background without you ever doing anything. But yeah, you know, depending on how many photos you've got, you could either use the free space or more likely buy for cheap, like $12 a year, a little more space. And then they will back up from all your Apple devices to the cloud, and they will sync to each other. You can see them.
And they back up full quality, right?
Full quality. That's right. And you can set them they don't all have to download to your devices. They can live in the cloud. The cloud can be a backup, and then you can tap on one and it gets downloaded on demand.
So what I do on my iOS devices is I turn that on and I say, yes, let you manage the storage.
Yes.
Because in theory, you're never going to fill up your iPad or iPhone because Apple will back up the high-res, full-quality versions and then put smaller versions on your phone. Although I noticed 20 gigs of photos on here.
So the way
but that's because it says there's enough free space.
Yeah, I think on the iPhone, the way it works is that it waits until you're at about 10% of your storage is free, at which point it'll start purging some of your, essentially your photos cache.
But you'll always have a thumbnail.
You'll always have a thumbnail, and then if you tap, it will load the photo in the background.
Right.
And on the same deal on the Mac, you can set the Mac to keep all your photos, or you can set it to optimize photo storage, and the same thing will happen. In fact, on Sierra, it will just kind of do that dynamically, that if you want to copy a file and there's not enough free space, it knows to delete those temporary versions of the photos because it knows that they're also in the cloud. And I've been using it for more than a year now, and I don't lose my photos. In fact, if you delete a photo and you're syncing with iCloud Photo Library, it basically goes in a holding bin for somewhere between 30 and 40 days.
So it will potentially delete it from the library. But not right away.
But not right away. So even if you delete something and then you have regrets later, if it's been less than a month, you can get it back.
One of the reasons I use both. One of the reasons I also use Google Photos like Derek is because Google Photos, unlike Apple Photos, has a button to delete backed up photos.
Right. And Apple wants to manage that without any UI, which is fine when it works. But if you get in a point where it's not acting transparently and you have that moment where you're like, why can't I fit this? Oh, it's because all those photos, there's no button to push, which is really frustrating. There's no button to say, can you just blow out the cache of photos here because I really need this free space? And I wish Apple would add that feature.
It's a little janky. You have to press the button here that says, can you get that close up of that? I'm not sure if you can see that. Yeah. It says free up space. This is in Google Photos. But it doesn't erase it. It just moves it into the trash can of iCloud Photos, of Photos itself, right? And then you have to go into Photos. It even explains how to do this. You have to then go into Photos and delete it there. But at least there's a way to do it on the phone. Apple doesn't even offer you that.
Right. So I think if you want an alternative or an addition to Google Photos, iCloud Photo Library is great because it's always backing up what you shoot.
Right.
And depending on what the cost is, it may be worth it to you. The other thing would be if you are somebody who's paying for Dropbox or you've got a lot of free Dropbox storage, you could also use Dropbox as a photos backup. Dropbox
Amazon Prime members get free backup.
That's right. You just have to remember to launch those apps because unlike Apple's app, those other apps, if they're not running, they can't back up your photos.
Apple, one of the reasons you get such great battery life on an iPhone is Apple doesn't let anybody run in the background forever except their own apps.
Right, and once they go away, then they don't have the ability to sort of call fall back and continue the upload.
Yeah, I launch my Google Photos every few days just to make sure it's.
That's the trick, and it's a shame. It would be great if Apple added a little API for that for developers to use, but I think maybe there's a reason they don't, because they want to not only have more control over battery life, but of course that makes their photo sync better than everyone else's.
You can't knock the battery life. In fact, we were talking about the new Apple Watch, and boy, the battery life is better. watchOS 3 improved it, but also this is a slice thicker now.
Yeah, I can't notice the thickness difference or the weight difference. Either. I just don't notice it, but it is the rare Apple product that got bigger when it went to another generation,
and it shows the biggest Apple Watch we've ever made.
And it shows that with especially adding the GPS in there, they really needed to add battery. And I heard from a lot of people, especially very active people, and especially people using the smaller model, the 38 millimeter, who said that they actually did have battery problems. So between this and watchOS 3,
because she would work out, she would use the heart rate, and it would kill the. She stopped using the Apple Watch for that reason. She had the 38. I have the 42, and it always made it through the day. But today, I took a spin class, had a heart rate monitor on full time for an hour and a half. It's still at 81%. Yeah. It's remarkable how much better the battery life is. So that's good news. And of course, the phone. This thing just goes and goes and goes. And
the Plus especially.
Yeah, I was very happy traveling with this because that's where you really feel it.
And that's where you want the good camera too.